What's something that as a non-American you will never understand? Haha, to add on to some of these explanations you should look up homecoming moms on Google. It's a Texas homecoming tradition that never made any sense to me. People drop up to $30 to $500 on these things. The girls at my school really like to put bells on theirs, so it always sounded like Christmas in the school hallways on homecoming day. LOL, homecoming is a dedicated, American, football game intended to invite previous alumni back home to watch a football game. It is usually a game where the home team is expected to win, so it's fun to watch. Many schools hold their class reunions on homecoming weekend, so at the school my hubs was a football coach at, they'd have the 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 40-year, and 50-year class reunions that weekend, and they'd all go to the football game to support the team and to see old classmates. Homecoming as a HS student involves a dance after the game. There is also usually a court where popular kids get nominated and recognized for their achievements/niceness. The girls chosen get all dressed up, arms escorted out by their fathers, and one senior girl is crowned homecoming queen. TBH, I find the HS student part of homecoming super weird, but I'm all about a dance and the chance to get all dressed up. I've never lived in a Hoa neighborhood, and honestly I would never want to. I hate the idea of someone threatening to kick me out of the home I bought because my yard wasn't mowed a certain way or a friend parked their car in my driveway. It's usually run by some old-ass dinosaur with a power complex. Not to mention they come from racist backgrounds. I don't want to be told what to do by a racist old hag. They began in California in the 50s as a way to keep non-whites from moving into white neighborhoods. Decades-old bylaws prohibiting ownership by blacks are still occasionally discovered in some Hoas rule books. Nowadays they are used to keep undesirables, poors, young people, etc., out and maintain home values by forcing residents to keep up their properties in certain ways. Way too often they devolve into petty dictatorships where you can be kicked out of your own home for not keeping your grass a certain height. Taking vacation days is a huge hassle because 1. You get a giant guilt trip. 2. You can't actually plan anything because they wait until last minute to approve your time off request. We had a trip planned to Disneyland and my boss said he'd approve it, so booked everything, and a week before he denied my request because we were too short-staffed. I had to tell him either he fully reimbursed me for our trip, approved the time off, or I quit. But I wasn't losing thousands of dollars. He wrote me up for insubordination and I quit. Went on vacation and had a new job the day after we got back from vacation. I was going to lose 80 HRS of paid time off, but I threatened the owner the company with legal action and they paid it out. Being an American worker. Americans have always had a culture of rugged individualism. There's an expectation that an adult should be able to make it on their own. Also, American culture revolves around the nuclear family. When you become an adult you strike out on your own, get married, have kids, and that's your new family unit. You live apart from your parents and are financially and otherwise independent from them. Other cultures don't perceive the family unit this way. Adult children might bring their spouse to live with them in their family home. Money and possessions might be freely shared between parents/kids/aunts/uncles/cousins, etc. It's just a cultural difference. So this started after the Great Depression ended, when the US had a big economical boom. Jobs were everywhere and you could buy a house, a car, and raise a family just making a very average pay. Since then our standards for society have stayed the same, but our economy has gone to shit. So we have 18-year-olds getting kicked out and couch surfing because they're working 3 jobs and still can't afford rent. In school in general really, my high school built an entire complex for our soccer, football, and football teams, American football. But our choir department didn't have enough funding to have one concert. Edit, I keep getting the same responses, so let me clarify, I don't mean weekly performances, I mean we couldn't afford to have a single concert that entire year. Heck, if you've been in a high school choir, you'd know that you can't expect even the advanced ensemble to be ready for a new performance every week. One of the reasons it became a thing is that there was a huge push in the late 1800s and maybe the early 1900s for exercise to be part of the educational experience. I think it was kind of a mind, body, and soul type ethos. This is also right around when American football began to develop into its modern form, in the sense that it was distinguishable from what would become association football and that scoring was standardized. It still looked nothing like the game we know today, and it caught on like wildfire. The late 1800s also saw the invention of basketball and the standardization of baseball, so the three biggest American sports all were gaining in prominence when colleges went into the sports craze. I don't know enough about hockey to know if anything similar was happening there, though both hockey and baseball are very regionalized at the college level compared to football and basketball. I think there's also a lot of parallels to be drawn between college sports and fraternities and sororities. They are both populated by people who are stereotypically in the same social strata. They both provide networking opportunities with current students and alumni. And they both feed into the arms race culture where each school or each chapter is always trying to outdo all of the others as a matter of pride, and people are willing to sink serious money into making that happen. Why do colleges and even high schools sink so much money into sports? Because it makes money, and raises their academic profile, and gives them bragging rights, etc. Why does it make money? Because in a lot of places, it is the closest thing to a professional franchise that the area is going to get. Most people don't root for college teams because that's the college they went to, they root for college teams because that's where someone in their family went, or it's who their parents or relatives root for, or it's who other people they grew up with root for. That's particularly true in the South where there's fewer population centers large enough to support a. American football got its start from college clubs picking it up. College football was a popular weekend activity before the NFL ever existed. Those traditions have carried over for 100 plus years. This is supported by the fact that tons of colleges have their athletic department funded by their football programs alone. It's such a wildly popular sport that it has enabled colleges to begin sports programs in other places as well. I've never had a single thing stolen off my porch. It seems to be regional. You could leave a diamond ring on my front stop with a sign that says "Steal me" and no one would touch it. At worst, my neighbor would notice and pick it up for me. They'd put a note in my door or mailbox that they have it and I'll go over and get it. People just don't steal things in my neighborhood. Yes, the meth dealer kid used to steal stuff, but it was just little things. Change out of the ashtray in your car, that sort of thing. Nothing more than that. Keep in mind, my neighborhood is not Ozzie and Harriet. Right down the road is a rub and tug place as well as a meth dealer and a reoccurring meth lab. The lab keeps coming back when they get busted. There are plenty of people stealing stuff, but stealing stuff off your porch is just rude. At least in the suburbs, the US is remarkably safe. I've never had a package stolen off my porch. I rarely lock my back door. I'm part of a buy nothing group in my neighborhood where people offer up things they have that they no longer need or ask for things they need before going to buy them. Because of that, there's currently a waffle iron I don't use anymore sitting on my porch for someone I don't know who needed one to come get whenever she wants. I don't live anywhere special, I'm in the suburbs of a major metro area in Texas. It's just kinda how life is here. Those are descriptors of what year they are in HS and college. Most American schools are set up as elementary K through 5, start at 5 years old and are typically 11 by the time you finish 5th grade, middle school, grades 6 to 8, ages 11 to 14, and then HS, grades 9 to 12, ages 14 to 18, and then college. 9th grade and first year of college are both called freshmen. 10th grade and second year of college are both called sophomores. 11th grade and third year of college are both called juniors. 12th grade and fourth year and beyond in college are all called seniors. If you knew all that and just didn't know why we do that, I apologize cause I have no answers. I don't know why we do it. Nobody really likes the current healthcare system, which makes sense because it's an accident of history that's held up by patchwork and duct tape. We just can't agree on what would be better, because there's always trade-offs. Healthcare is a complex thing to mess with, and every time major healthcare reform is attempted, people are more scared of the unknown than they are of the current system. In the past half-century, the biggest swings in House representation in a midterm year have come in 1974, Watergate, 1994, failed bid for health care reform, 2010, Obamacare, and 2018, failed bid to repeal Obamacare. It's not a failure to accept we need something different, but it is a failure to commit to anything different. Edit, and, of course, between insurers, providers, and pharmaceutical companies there will be at least 3 different major lobbies pushing reform in one direction or another and trying to sway. American who lives abroad here, and I am 99% sure that most non-Americans do not understand how huge, geographically, the United States is. When I tell people here that I would regularly travel 1 hour to 1 hour 30 minutes each way to get to high school every day, and during all that travel I never even left my city, I feel like I can see their brains explode. This is also probably true for people from other geographically big countries like China, Russia, India, etc. Hey, I agree. I once talked to my American husband about traveling the length of the North Island in NZ in like 6 to 8 hours and he was like, dude, that's barely across my state. I never really realized just how huge the US is. I had to write something about a road trip and asked him how far it would take from point A to B and he was like, 2 days. Well shit, haha. Edit, I was incredibly tired when I wrote this. It takes about 13 hours from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the North Island. I was thinking of the time I traveled from about halfway to Wellington LOL. I made $3.65 an hour as a waitress. Some nights I'd get $100 in tips, Friday or Saturday night, for 5 hours of work. That's pretty good, comes out to around $20 an hour. But then if you have to work a Monday lunch or Tuesday lunch, it was so dead and so full of older people using coupons that it would be maybe $15 for 5 hours of work. That's when a lot of cleaning would be done. And then the church crowd was always the worst on Sundays, very impatient, all came in at once, ordered cheaper food than usual for a group of that size because it was lunchtime and often many kids' meals involved. They barely tipped anything so we would be exhausted and barely make anything for the work. It's bad for a lot of reasons. First, it puts you in a bad position with the tipping customers. You'd make the largest tips off of single men, especially those who ordered a lot of drinks, tend to spend more and tip more, and you can imagine the situations that sets you up for. It also puts you in a bad position with management because the shifts you work make a huge difference on the amount of money you get, so you put up with a lot of harassment to keep good paying shifts. And lastly, it leads to a lot of discrimination when it comes to the service a person gets when they come in. If you haven't tipped in the past, or look like someone doesn't usually tip, race, age, etc., then you're going to get very poor service. Hat is highly dependent on each family. The USA is very diverse, so customs differ with each household. Heck, my family is English and we don't wear shoes in our house, while some white families are fine with it. Whenever I go to someone's home for the first time, I ask them as I'm entering what they do and just copy them. If they wear shoes inside, I will too. If they don't, I'll leave them at the entryway. Excellent question. I served in the US Air Force for nearly 10 years. Need to see a doctor? Okay, see a doctor. Need meds? Here you go. Sick. If the doctor says stay home, you stay home. The only time I paid money out of pocket was when my wife had kids. My oldest was born cesarean, and she and my wife were in the hospital 4 days. $48. Total. It can be like this for everyone in the US, but the pharma and insurance lobbyists spend lots of money making sure it doesn't happen. 2003 Healthcare Modernization Act made it illegal for the government to negotiate healthcare prices. Health insurance people saw their chance and started pulling $1.5 trillion a year off the government. Anytime someone tries to stand up, they just open the floodgates and squash them. Which sort of sucks. We're paying enough to pay every medical professional in the US $100,000 a year, by every hospital, and by our leading pharmaceutical companies outright every year. I'm from the States, and I know a lot of people/family members who will fight tooth and nail to argue against any sort of betterment of our healthcare system. I have a friend, in favor of free healthcare, who is diabetic and went to the hospital recently because he went into diabetic shock from rationing his insulin. Spent a week in the hospital and was doing pretty bad for a few days there. They gave him vouchers for about 10 free vials. Now he has a huge hospital bill, all because he couldn't afford to properly use the medicine that he needs to live. It's not so much a tolerance, as it is something a lot of people desperately want fixed, but don't have enough power to change. Hopefully that tide shifts soon, but I don't imagine that taking hold for a long time. Uneasy face. My father is American and he makes other Americans really uncomfortable with his long and detailed answers to that question, and that's not a feature of his old age. He's always been like that. Dad feels like even other well-educated and well-traveled Americans don't really want genuine and deep conversations. Maybe it's a generational issue. Maybe it's because he isn't mobile anymore, can't afford to move, and it's just the older people in his area. I've had lots of engaging discussions online with younger Americans. Please come and visit us without meaning it is something my Danish mother noticed. School mandated sports. Many schools here are old, repurposed buildings with no place to host PE activities. And even newer buildings only have a multi-purpose gym with no bleachers, never mind a stadium or anything like that. Regardless, schools don't have sports programs, they're all about learning. Whatever you want to do in your free time, it's up to you, but don't expect special treatment because you have soccer practice or games. Top-level young athletes either drop out or get their HS diploma as private students. For that reason, another absurd concept to us is school pride. Basically, we pick high schools because of the specific curriculum they offer: classics, maths, arts, technology, languages, music, but if there's more than one of the same kind, we go for reputation or convenience. To us, being proud of our school is like being proud of a post office or a restaurant. It's just a service we choose based on our needs and desires.